Hello and welcome. You're watching World Panorama, your weekly wrap-up of all the big international news that has happened all this week. I'm Ishan Russell, and these are the headlines that we're tracking right now. Security agencies worldwide initiate additional measures and new mechanisms to take on the Islamic State and its growing terror footprints. Studies suggest Daesh continues to radicalize and recruit despite alliances and crackdowns against it. That's our focus story. Signs of gaining antipathy against the huge migrant influx into Europe. Denmark's parliament passes strong measures against asylum seekers as the European Union moves closer to accepting that its Schengen open border arrangement may have to be suspended. Snow and sleet in the tropics of Southeast Asia, rare heat wave in Bolivia, traditional weather patterns in disarray as the World Met Organization officially declares 2015 the hottest year on record. And the mosquito-borne Zika virus outbreak raises a storm in Central and South America. Cases linked to birth defects in newborns reported in the United States, Brazil and other countries as the World Health Organization assesses the level of global emergency. Well, our top focus this week, the fight against the Islamic State and its expanding terror footprint. Regional security bodies worldwide have initiated additional measures and new mechanisms to preempt strikes amid a raised terror threat. Now, with studies suggesting Daesh continues to radicalize and recruit despite alliances and crackdowns against it.
Video seized from Islamic State militia, says the caption. More pictures of an unending war in Iraq, government forces looking to drive out the Islamic State. Years of this conflict has brought forth more gruesome and expanding faces of the outfit. The latest being Ramadi, where besides destruction of priceless heritage monuments, there's evidence of inhuman, barbaric behavior against men, women and children.
We are now in the area of Al-Jamia in Ramadi, where we found a mass grave containing the remains of more than 40 people, including policemen, women and children of various ages. This is more evidence of Islamic State crimes. The group uses various heinous and savage acts to liquidate and kill our people.
The footprint now extends well beyond Iraq and Syria, what they originally termed the Caliphate. Turkey, Europe, North Africa and the Middle East have all been hit, with the group extending offshoots to Afghanistan and beyond. And there are big plans for the future. The Islamic State Aspirational Caliphate covers the Middle East, Central Asia, India and parts of China and Russia, besides North Africa into Europe. A strong echo persists of the Paris attacks more than 2 months back. The terror dread across Europe has the entire continent and more on edge, with every sign of the terror outfit growing in strength despite a worldwide crackdown.
Daesh has no problem in recruiting. Foreign fighters are still flocking in huge numbers to Iraq and Syria through Turkey. Today, the Middle Eastern region is witnessing sectarian tensions, and everything is being interpreted on that basis. This will lead to more recruitment for Daesh.
A European counter-terrorism center within Europol, based in The Hague, is the latest addition to the anti-terror fight in the region. Alongside a call for greater cooperation against terror between security chiefs of European nations, it reiterated that Islamic State terror in Europe was a very real threat, at least in the foreseeable future.
So-called Islamic State has a willingness and a capability to carry out further attacks in Europe. And of course, all of the national authorities across Europe are working to prevent that from happening. We know that there is a capability.
Or look to Southeast Asia, perhaps the latest IS terror victim in Jakarta. Government ministers, security personnel, religious leaders and academics from 19 countries gathered in the Malaysian capital Kuala Lumpur on the theme de-radicalization and countering violent extremism, looking to preempt and limit worse to come.
This is why we are here, to share and analyze the best practices, to help identify the target groups who are vulnerable to extreme militant ideology, and to discuss the role of governments in rehabilitation efforts and how best to return any of our citizens who have lost their way to fruitful and responsible lives.
Some of the world's most powerful warships, France's Charles de Gaulle, Germany's Augsburg, and Britain's St. Albans, stand deployed in the Persian Gulf, the biggest focus, the Islamic State, an effort to keep it under control. But there's a realization now that this terror army rejects physical barriers. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
And we're joined by Dr. Awwad, the senior journalist who's really studied and understood this region, and he hails from that particular region. But it's not about a region anymore. It's a global problem as far as the Islamic State's presence goes. So first, let's talk about the military campaigns that are on against the Islamic State. And there have been bombings that have been going around various places around the world, especially in the Middle East. But how successful has those been in hurting the Islamic State?
Well, I think the ground was prepared fully during the American occupation of Iraq. You remember after the 2003, this al-Qaeda in Iraq and Syria was born. So after 2011, this was declared inside Iraq and Syria. And then they have sent somebody from al-Qaeda to Syria, and they have expanded. They took a full advantage of the current situation in Syria, and because of the uprising, because of the social unrest, all these people have found the ground fertile to grow. So once they grow, they have expanded. They have taken a good chunk of territories. Nevertheless, the American and the West have been saying for years, that for the last 2 years, that they have been fighting IS. But till the Russian intervened last September, last year, we realized that the fight against IS and Daesh, the terrorist organization, have really come to the open, that whatever the Russians have done in the last 4 months have really covered up what the American have been doing for the last 2 years. So therefore, now the real fight against IS has been taking place. American and the Russian are on the same platform. The rest of the world and the international community also came on form that they should finish this phenomena from the Middle East and West Asia. And therefore, there is a real fight now against this terrorist organization. That's why we notice in Syria that people are fleeing, going to Iraq, running away to Turkey, to Jordan, to neighboring countries, run away along with, sneaked with the migrants. So everything has been showing that now the fight is really, because what happened when the Russians took over, as you remember, they were bombing the oil supply line. So the funding of the organization have been really crunched. They have feeling the heat. Austerity measure has been taking place. Yet we are allowing the social media, the networking, the Twitters, the Facebooks. You have 90,000 to Twitter per day for a 40,000 strong terrorist organization. Therefore, it shows per day. That means there is a strong networking, which they have really funded enough money on it. And the irony of the matter is that the West have kept a close eyes, let this YouTube, Facebook, social networking infiltrate, disseminate into this part of the world. That's why the danger is real for this time. And I do agree with you that it's a global threat.
All right, but the problem is multifaceted, but the other facet of it is, of course, the de-radicalization process. Now, increasingly around the world, we've seen people and communities getting alienated, and that has led to fodder for organizations such as Daesh, where you have young recruits coming in. We have in India had people who've been arrested for links with the Islamic State. On the other hand, in Malaysia, there was a conference to understand de-radicalization. How successful and how important is that versus a bombing campaign?
Well, to be honest with you, the problem here is not the de-radicalization. De-radicalization is one process. The problem is we are dealing with the result of IS, Daesh and the world. We are not dealing with the cause of it. The cause of it, there is certain group within the Islamic world. They believe in this Takfiri group, or the Islamists, what we call the Salafists and the Wahhabists. These are the people who have supported, funded, and spent, nourished them, armed them, and trained them, and let them go. And if you notice that we have, even the United Nations have admitted, 83 nationalities from different parts of the world, more than 50,000 people have joined IS, and Syria and Iraq. It is a clear indication that there are certain people who are alienated within their country, radicalized within their country, criminal background they're having. Most of them left the country and joined IS, or they are religiously converted people. So that shows that there is a plot which has been manufactured and nourished. And unfortunately, the ground was fertile in the Arab world, where you have autocratic regimes, you had monarchy supporting, you had no democratic setup, institution really to allow these people to work. And then moreover, you have more than double-digit the unemployment rate. So when you start giving them $1,000 per month salary, and then when their government giving $200, you are giving them the ground. So de-radicalization is a program, yes, it is a must. But first of all, you should each country has to deal with its own radicals element before they are allowing them. Because now you notice, whoever is going back home, they are creating the havoc back at home.
Right.
You take it in Belgium, in France, in UK, in Germany, and now in Indonesia, in Malaysia. Whatever country had more than 500 people, mercenaries join IS, they are going back and they will create havoc. Look at Tunisia, look at Egypt, look at Libya. It's the same story. So there was a plot. These people will gone back home to create havoc inside their countries.
All right, one final question. We just have about a minute. So in terms of how to really tackle the problem, what needs to be done on a war footing?
It's very simple. You deal with the cause of it. The cause of it, the state-sponsored terrorist organization, the government in certain countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar have funded enough money for the last 5 years. They have been bombing money into these countries. Turkey have opened its border, have created a shelter, safe haven for them throughout the border of 950 kilometers in Syria. These are the issues you deal. You do not deal with issues with the outcome of it. You deal with the resultant to this problem. These are the problems. Second, which is most important, is create democratic institution in this part of the world. Support democratic institution. Let the people of this land really have their own decision to find out how to rule their country, whom to choose their leader, and find a better employment. So once you have a better employment, a good institution to do, and stop the funding of it, it's easy to fight it. It's a phenomenon which will die on its own. But the danger is coming in certain radical country where there is no setup. CIS is now in the target. Malaysia is in the target. Indonesia is the main target. Turkey is the main target. So if you do not really address the issues, we'll end up in trouble.
All right, Dr. Awwad, thank you very much for coming in and helping us understand how to really combat the problem of Daesh a little better. Thank you so much for coming in and helping us understand that. Well, on that note, we'll step into a short break. Still to come on the other side, Transparency International's latest Global Corruption Index ranks the Scandinavian nations as the least corrupt. We'll have more on these rankings and other developments of the week on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama. Now news about the European migrant crisis and a possible impact on the Schengen open borders arrangement. The European Union moved closer to this week to accepting that its Schengen open borders plan may be suspended for up to 2 years. This as signals emerge of a greater crackdown on migrants after the Cologne New Year's Eve rampage incident. Even in a pro-humanitarian, pro-welfare Denmark, Parliament has cleared some strong measures against migrants.
An unending influx, one that, coupled with news of troublemakers and terror elements, has given rise to an unwelcoming sentiment in Europe over the last couple of months. Despite efforts already initiated, deals with Turkey to help stem the flow and the like, they continue to pour in to islands in Greece, determined to move north into what they see as utopia at last. Austria, Germany, France, through to the Scandinavian countries, have felt the inflow hardest. And now, perhaps most surprisingly, Denmark has lashed out hard. On Tuesday, the Danish Parliament backed a controversial proposal to confiscate asylum seekers' valuables to pay for their upkeep. MPs also approved plans to delay family reunions for asylum seekers. Temporary residence permits will be shortened and the conditions for obtaining a permanent permit will be restricted. A strong message on the refugee influx.
The argument that Denmark doesn't do its bit, we absolutely do our bit when it comes to refugees in Europe. We absolutely do our bit. It's not a secret that when we stand here today, It is because we wish to take a smaller share.
Understandably, the move has given rise to a volley of protests from migrants, calling the new law derogatory and dehumanizing amid a genuine need for repaired livelihoods. Human rights groups have drawn comparisons to the confiscation of valuables from Jews during World War II. The United Nations, the European Commission have hit out too. Amnesty International described the vote as mean-spirited.
UNHCR is of course concerned by recent measures proposed by the government of Denmark with regard to asylum seekers. This relates to a number of things, including reduced social benefits, restricted access to family unification, and this at a time when the need for solidarity and responsibility sharing at the EU level really is the first priority.
Meanwhile, the EU edged closer to accepting that its Schengen open borders area may be suspended for up to 2 years. Many nations have fenced off borders, others have reimposed controls. There are other indications to suggest that any migrant policy is running out of steam. The 28 member states have not agreed on an EU-wide mechanism for relocating migrants. Several Central and East European countries refuse to accept migrants. Processing of asylum applications is slow and there is a big backlog, so reception centers are overcrowded. Countries are no longer sending back migrants to their first point of entry to the EU under the Dublin regulation. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, herself under pressure after the Cologne hooliganism, urges optimism still.
We must find a level of balance and we should not become pessimistic too quickly. I still believe that we can manage it. Of course, we must significantly reduce the number of refugees and we are working on that, but those who are already here should get to know the Germany that has shown itself to be a place where many people are there for others.
The issue has rung across Europe for more than a year now. 1 million arrived by sea into Europe from the Middle East and North Africa in 2015, and the tide just refuses to ebb. A disturbing backlash from the European state shows signs of taking shape. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And in a related development, other Scandinavian countries, including Sweden and Finland, are set to crack down on asylum seekers too. Sweden is to deport up to 80,000 people. Finland says it would send back 20,000 migrants whose asylum claims it expects to reject. Sweden's interior minister said chartered planes would be used to carry out the mass expulsions, but he admitted that the exercise would take years to complete. Sweden has received far more refugees per capita than any other European country, pushing the government to impose border controls, ending its initial liberal approach on the issue. The decision to publicize the deportation move raises the prospect of thousands of migrants going underground to prevent their removal.
Last year, we had roughly over 160,000 people applying for asylum in Sweden, which is the highest number ever. And it's also the highest number per capita in the European Union. And of course, many of these people, that, for instance, those who have come from the war in Syria, but also other groups, will be permitted to stay in Sweden. But there are other groups, and each individual case is tried individually, that will not be able to stay in Sweden because our courts will say that, well, you don't meet the criteria for that.
Here are some other big stories that made headlines around the world this week in our segment Globe Watch.
US scientists have urged the World Health Organization to take urgent action over the Zika virus linked to shrunken brains in children. They say the virus has explosive pandemic potential, having caused panic in Brazil. In the past year, the virus has swept through the Caribbean and Latin America, reportedly infecting nearly 250,000 people. Researchers said a vaccine might be ready for testing in 2 years, but it could be a decade before it is publicly available. The US and China agreed this week on the need for new sanctions against North Korea following Pyongyang's 4th nuclear test in early January. Beijing is reported to have cautioned, however, that the move should not escalate tensions in the area. US Secretary of State John Kerry, on a 2-day visit to Beijing, urged China to use its economic leverage over North Korea amid reports that Kim Jong-un is preparing for another missile test. Transparency International's annual Corruption Perception Index for 2015, released this week, ranks Denmark as the world's most non-corrupt nation, followed by Finland. North Korea and Somalia tied for last place, the most corruption-ridden nations, a spot they shared in last year's index as well. The US ranks at 16th, the UK 10th. India is at 76th position. The index is based on expert opinions of public sector corruption, looking at a range of factors like whether governmental leaders are held to account or go unpunished for corruption, the perceived prevalence of bribery, and whether public institutions respond to citizens' needs.
Now, this year is off to a frigid start on the weather front, with the US East Coast digging out from a monster blizzard and parts of Asia shivering in record cool temperatures. But complications in weather patterns extend further. The UN World Met Organization this week officially declared 2015 as the hottest year on record.
Inches deep in snow. A small army of workers and equipment look to meet clean-up deadlines ahead of the snow emergency being lifted Wednesday evening. The mayhem was the result of nearly 2 days of snow blizzards along the entire US East Coast that brought Washington, D.C. and several other cities to a virtual halt. The storm killed 35 people in 10 states.
This is the worst I've ever seen in 25 years.
I was stuck inside for 2 days in a row. Finally got out today. So it feels good, it feels good.
That was a region used to cold winter extremes. How about a chill spell in the humid tropics of Southeast Asia that have never known anything below the balmy 20s and 30s? A cold wave from Siberia making its way south via China through an unusual polar vortex pulled temperatures down sharply. In Hong Kong, Vietnam, Korea, South Japan and the entire region, a wintry jolt for a completely unready population, something most had never seen before.
Far too cold for me. Hong Kong's supposed to be warm. This is not Hong Kong.
Snow, sleet and icy winds across East Asia caused at least 95 deaths, hundreds of flight cancellations and chaos across the region. In China, as many as 24 weather stations recorded all-time low temperatures. For the first time ever, Hong Kong opened special winter care shelters, 17 of them across the city. Hospitals were flooded with cases of hypothermia. A nightmare also that had come to life for farmers and bread earners of several professions.
Since I was born, I have never seen anything like this. This weather is badly affecting our society and my family's economy. We are all in a difficult situation because our cattle, pigs, chickens and plantations are all dying from the cold.
So much for the winter chills. On to the other extreme, heat waves and more of the El Nino impact and climate change. Record high temperatures in Bolivia, drought in parts of South America, massive waves along coastlines and mild winters across the globe go down, says the Met Office, as an ill omen of worse to come. 2015 goes down as the hottest year on record, with temperatures up 0.76 degrees above the long-term global average.
What's important is that this is part of a long-term trend. So 14 of the 15 hottest years on record have all been this century. We've just had, obviously, the hottest year by a big margin. We've had the hottest 5 years and we've had the hottest 10 years. It's part of a long-term trend. There is no pause in global warming. It is continue and it is set to continue further.
Some 190 nations had agreed at a summit in Paris last month to take steps to shift from fossil fuels towards cleaner energies to limit warming. This long list comes as a warning of sorts to get to work. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Let's shift gears now onto the world of sports and bring you some big news from the sports arena around the globe in our segment Sports Action.
Usain Bolt has said that he has considered the possibility of extending his remarkable sprinting career to the 2020 Olympics, but is targeting a history-making new world 200 meters record at this year's Rio de Janeiro Games first. The Jamaican sprint star has repeatedly said he plans to hang up his spikes after the 2017 World Championships in London. However, Bolt added that his coach Glenn Mills had suggested he was capable of running in a fourth Olympics if he chooses to. A whistleblower has given potentially key evidence to Swiss prosecutors in their investigations of FIFA and suspended President Sepp Blatter. The spokesman for Switzerland's Attorney General's office, André Marti, revealed progress in the case in an interview with German broadcaster ARD. Marti said a witness, a so-called whistleblower, gave them interesting information relevant to the case, which brought the authorities markedly forward in the criminal investigation. Brazilian striker Rodrigo scored a first-half goal to lead Valencia to a 1-0 win over Las Palmas and send Gary Neville's team into the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey on Thursday. Rodrigo found the net from inside the area in the 20th minute to help Valencia advance 2-1 on aggregate following a 1-1 draw in the first leg in Valencia. Sevilla also advanced on Thursday thanks to a 3-0 win over second-tier club Mirandes, reaching the semis 5-0 on aggregate score. David Warner has been named the Australian Test Player of the Year and also defeated captain Steve Smith for the prestigious Allan Border medal. The 29-year-old southpaw received 240 votes to win Australian cricket's highest individual prize and also got 6 more votes than Smith to be named Test Player of the Year. Meanwhile, all-rounder Glenn Maxwell was named as the One-Day International Player of the Year and Adam Voges as the Domestic Player of the Year. Sri Lanka T20 skipper Lasith Malinga and Angelo Matthews, who are recovering from their respective injuries, are unlikely to feature in next month's 3-match series against India. Malinga, who was ruled out of the New Zealand tour with a knee injury, will require another fortnight to regain full fitness, while Test and ODI captain Matthews has been nursing a groin strain that largely prevented him from bowling in New Zealand. Sri Lanka will kickstart their Indian tour from February 9 to 14th before the start of the Asia Cup, which commences on February 24th.
And finally, members of Rio de Janeiro's Rio Carnival troupe make last touches to floats and costumes ahead of its annual parade starting the 5th of February. This year's Samba Drone parades will pay tributes to Brazilian football greats Pelé and Neymar. Rio's top 12 Samba schools are competing this time. Take a look. Have a great week.